The ballroom at Halverston House blazed with 3,000 candles, and Cordelia Thornberry could feel every one of them watching her humiliation unfold. She stood at the edge of the dance floor, with her gloved hands folded so tightly that the seams pinched her fingers. The orchestra was playing a waltz, the third of the evening, and her betrothed, Julian Ashcombe, the Duke of Pelham, was dancing it with another woman. Marisol Vance, the widow of a wine merchant, whose name had been whispered in connection with Julian's for the past 6 months. Cordelia had heard the whispers and dismissed them, told herself that men of consequence collected gossip the way fields collected starlings, and that none of it would matter once the wedding was announced. The wedding had been announced 4 weeks ago. The wedding was meant to take place in 11 days, and Julian was holding Marisol Vance against him as if the whole of London were not watching, his hand at the small of her back, his mouth close enough to her ear that the woman was laughing at whatever he had said. "Breathe, Cordelia." The voice came from her left, quiet, steady, not pitying. She did not turn her head, because turning her head would mean acknowledging that someone had noticed. "I am breathing, Mr. Ravensmere. You are holding your breath the way a woman holds a wine glass she is about to throw." That earned him a glance, brief and sharp. Theron Ravensmere stood half a pace behind her left shoulder, where he had always stood at events like this, close enough to be useful, far enough to be ignored. He was Julian's second cousin on the mother's side, a barrister, a man who had inherited a name without the fortune that usually accompanied it. "Did you know?" she said. "I suspected." "For how long?" 3 months. "And you did not tell me." "It was not my place." "It was someone's place." "Yes." The word carried more weight than an apology. "And I have been quietly furious with myself that the someone wasn't me." She looked at him properly. Theron had a face that did not announce itself, dark hair cut a little too plainly, gray eyes the color of pewter, a jaw that suggested he had once been told he ought to smile more and had decided against it on principle. "Where's your mother?" she asked. "In the card room with yours. 40 minutes. "Then no one of consequence has seen this yet. Lady Halverston has seen it. The Marchioness of Burrell has seen it twice, and has already left to find her sister. By morning, half of Mayfair will know." Cordelia closed her eyes, just long enough to understand that her life as she had arranged it was over. She opened them. Julian had stopped dancing. He stood at the edge of the floor near the door to the conservatory, and Marisol Vance's hand was on his arm. He bent his head toward her. He said something. She nodded. And then, in full view of every person who mattered in London, the Duke of Pelham led his mistress out of the ballroom. He did not look once at his betrothed. A footman dropped a glass somewhere. Cordelia heard it shatter as if from underwater. "Cordelia, look at me." She turned. Her face had gone the color of old paper. "You have a choice to make, and very little time to make it. My choice was made 4 weeks ago in front of a notary and a bishop. My choice is currently walking into the conservatory with another woman. That is not the choice I mean." She waited. He lowered his voice. "If you stay in this room until midnight, the engagement holds. Julian will return. He will offer some explanation that everyone will pretend to believe. You will marry him in 11 days, and spend the rest of your life knowing that he chose her in front of you and was permitted to come back. And the alternative? You leave." "I cannot leave. The carriage." "My carriage is at the side entrance. It has been there for an hour." She stared at him. "Why," she said slowly, "is your carriage at the side entrance?" When he spoke, his voice had gone a shade rougher. "Because I have known Julian Ashcombe my entire life, Miss Thornberry, and I knew tonight that he would do something he could not take back, and I would not see you stand in this room alone afterward. You came here with a carriage to take me away from my own betrothal ball. I came here with a carriage, in case you needed one." The orchestra struck the first notes of a new waltz. Somewhere in the conservatory, a woman laughed. Cordelia, who had been raised to be patient, raised to be gracious, raised to forgive small humiliations because larger fortunes depended on it, felt something inside her chest crack cleanly down the middle. "There is a third option. I'm offering you the carriage, Cordelia, not... You misunderstand me." She turned to face him fully now, and she felt the eyes of the room shift toward her, and she did not care. "My father's will stipulates that if I am unmarried at 25, my dowry reverts to the estate. I am 24. My birthday is in 9 days. If Julian breaks the engagement, and he will by tomorrow, I have 9 days to find a husband, or I am ruined twice over. Cordelia, I do not have 9 days. I have until midnight. By midnight, every gossip in this room will know what I know, and no respectable man in London will offer for a woman publicly discarded by a duke." Theron's face had gone very still. "There is a clergyman at Halverston House tonight, the bishop's nephew. He has license to perform a marriage by special dispensation. The license is good for the bearer's own use as well. You are asking me to. I am asking you what you came here prepared to offer." The clock with the laughing cupids began to chime the 3/4 hour, a quarter to midnight. He looked at her, not the clock. "Yes." "Yes, what, Mr. Ravensmere?" "Yes, Miss Thornberry, whatever you are asking me. The answer is yes." Her hand found his sleeve. "Then we have," she said, 15 minutes. The bishop's nephew was a thin, slightly rumpled young man named Edmund Hallicott, and he was eating a pear in the small library off the gallery when they found him. He looked up. He looked at their faces. He set the pear down. "Ah. I require a marriage," Cordelia said, "within 12 minutes." Hallicott did not blink. He had been a clergyman for 3 years, and the bishop's nephew for considerably longer, which had given him a useful instinct for distinguishing scandal that would survive from scandal that would not. "You consent?" he asked Theron. "I consent." "Of age, both?" "Yes." "You have a license?" Theron drew an envelope from his coat. It was folded in thirds, and the seal was already broken, as if he had been turning it over in his hand for some hours. Cordelia stared at it. "You came here," she said quietly, "with a carriage and a license." "I came here prepared." Hallicott took it, read it, raised his eyebrows once. "Witnesses. We need 2. Lady Halverston is in the green drawing room. Her cousin is with her. They are discreet. Fetch them. 3 minutes. Miss Thornberry, are you certain?" She looked at his kind young face. "I am certain." "Then sit, and try to look as though you have planned this for longer than 11 minutes. Theron went for the witnesses. Cordelia sat in the velvet chair by the fire and discovered that her hands had begun, finally, to shake. Not from fear, from the strange, clean fury of a woman who had finished, abruptly and forever, with patience. He returned with Lady Halverston, who looked at Cordelia with such complete understanding that Cordelia almost wept. Lady Halverston had been married 32 years, had buried 2 husbands, and had survived 3 scandals of her own. "My dear, is this what you want?" "It is what I am choosing. Those are not always the same thing. They are tonight." Lady Halverston nodded once. "Then I am proud of you. Mr. Ravensmere, I have known you since you were 8, and I am about to become very interested in whether you deserve her. Begin." Mrs. Pelford, the cousin, looking half asleep, signed where she was told. Hallicott opened his prayer book. The clock above the mantel read 7 minutes to midnight. "Dearly beloved," he began, then stopped. "We shall keep this brief." Cordelia did not remember most of the words afterward. She remembered Theron's voice when he said, "I will." She remembered her own voice. She remembered that his hand, when it took hers, was warm and not quite steady, and that his thumb pressed once against her wrist, just below the glove, as if to ask a question she did not yet know the answer to. She remembered that there was no ring. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "There was not time." "Use this." She pulled the betrothal ring from her left hand, the Pelham ring, the cold entailed thing Julian had placed there 4 weeks ago in his mother's drawing room while 3 aunts watched. "You cannot," Theron said. That ring belongs to me, until the engagement is formally broken, which has not yet happened. Tonight, in this room, before God and Lady Halverston, it is mine. Use it." He hesitated. Then he took it. He placed it on her right hand, leaving her left bare, and Hallicott pronounced them married. The clock struck 12. The first stroke was still humming in the air when the library door opened. Julian Ashcombe stood in the doorway. His coat was disheveled. His hair was no longer perfect. There was a smear of color along the line of his jaw that was not his own. He looked, Cordelia thought, with the strange clarity of a woman who had just stopped loving someone, like a man interrupted halfway through congratulating himself. He looked at the prayer book. He looked at Hallicott. He looked at Theron's hand, still holding hers. His face went the color of old milk. "Cordelia, Your Grace." "What have you?" "I have married your cousin, 8 minutes ago, by special license, before 2 witnesses and a clergyman. It is valid. It is registered. It is, in approximately 90 seconds, going to be the most discussed event in London for the next 6 months." She drew a breath. "I wish you a very pleasant evening. Please do not let us detain you from your guest in the conservatory." Julian's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You cannot." "It is done, Julian." "Theron." His head turned slowly. What you should have done 11 minutes ago when you saw what was happening. Excuse us. My wife and I are leaving." "My wife." The words went through Cordelia like a struck bell. She walked past Julian without looking at him. Theron's hand was at her elbow, not gripping, merely there. Lady Halverston was already saying in her carrying voice, "Oh, Mrs. Pelford, what an evening, and how perfectly unconnected we are to any of it. Isn't that fortunate?" Which Cordelia recognized as the opening note of a story Lady Halverston intended to spread before breakfast, in a particular shape, for particular reasons of her own. The side entrance was where Theron had said. The carriage was where he had said. The door shut, and the carriage moved, and only when the wheels were turning over the cobblestones did she understand what she had done. She had married a man she had spoken to perhaps a dozen times in her life. She had married him in 9 minutes. She had married him while still wearing another man's ring. Theron sat across from her in the dark. He did not speak. He did not reach for her. He sat with his hands resting on his knees, and Cordelia, looking at his profile in the brief flares of passing street lamps, realized something. He had been holding the license for hours. He had been carrying it, folded and refolded, against his heart, since before the ball began. "Theron, where are we going?" His pewter eyes caught a passing lamp. "Home, if you will have it." The word home sat between them like a third passenger, Cordelia Ravensmere, and the new name landed on her like a coat she had never tried on, but had been hanging in the wardrobe all along, closed her eyes, and let the carriage carry her into a life she hadn't, until 40 minutes ago, known she was going to live. Ravensmere House stood at the quiet end of Mortcombe Square, a tall, narrow townhouse with black railings and a single lamp burning over the door. It was the house of a man who had long since chosen a small, clean life over a large, compromised one. A housekeeper opened the door before Theron had raised his hand to the bell. Her face did not register surprise, only a swift professional recalculation. "Mrs. Halford, this is my wife." Mrs. Halford curtsied. "The blue room is aired, sir. I shall send Annie up with hot water." "Thank you. I shall be in the study." Sir. The study, Mrs. Halford. Mrs. Halford's mouth tightened. Very good, sir. Cordelia stood in the front hall in her ball gown and watched her husband walk away from her, down a corridor and shut a door. She turned to Mrs. Halford. He has not done this before. No, madam. And neither have I. No, madam. Then I think we should both pretend we have, until we work out what we are doing. Something flickered in Mrs. Halford's face that was not quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. Yes, madam. The blue room, if you please. The blue room was at the back of the house, small and low-ceilinged, with faded curtains and a bedspread mended along one seam. Cordelia, who had grown up where everything matched and nothing was mended, found that she liked it more than any room she had ever slept in. Annie brought hot water, helped her out of the gown, and laid out a borrowed nightdress. It is Mrs. Halford's, madam, until your things come. My things will not come, Annie. Then we shall send for them in the morning. When Annie had gone, Cordelia sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her bare hands. The Pelham ring was still on her right. She slid it off and set it on the bedside table, where it sat like a small, cold accusation. She did not get into the bed. She walked to the window, pulled back the curtain. The square below was empty. A single cat moved across the cobblestones, with nowhere it needed to be. She turned, walked out of the blue room, down the corridor in bare feet, and did not stop until she was standing in front of the study door. She knocked. Come. Theron was at the desk in his shirt sleeves, an untouched glass of brandy at his elbow, a single candle beside a stack of papers. He stood when he saw her, too fast, the chair scraping. Cordelia. I have approximately 7 questions. I do not require you to answer all of them tonight, but I require you to answer one. Sit down. I would rather stand. Sit. Please. It is 2 a.m, and you are barefoot, and I cannot have a conversation while wondering whether your feet are cold. She sat. The fire reached her almost immediately, and she had not realized until that moment how cold she had been. Theron took the chair opposite. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and waited. You had a license? Yes. How long before tonight? The candle guttered and steadied. 11 days. 11. The license takes 7 days to issue. I applied the morning after the engagement was announced. She stared at him. That is not a thing a sensible man does. No. You applied for a marriage license to me on the day after I became engaged to your cousin. Yes. Why? He looked at the fire. He looked at his hands. 3 years ago, you stopped at a bookseller's in Hatchard's. You were with your aunt. You were looking for a particular volume of Cowper, and the shop didn't have it. And you were disappointed in a quiet way that you tried to hide because your aunt was already impatient. The bookseller said he would have the volume sent when it came in, and you thanked him with a kind of weary courtesy I have thought about, on and off, for 3 years. The volume came the following week. I purchased it. I had it sent to you anonymously. Cordelia's hand went slowly to her mouth. The Cowper. The blue Cowper. Yes. I have it on my bedside table. I have had it for 3 years. I never knew who. No. And you never told me. What was I to tell you? Miss Thornberry, I am a man you do not know. There was no version of that conversation that did not make me a fool or a danger. I told myself I had done a small, kind thing. I told myself I would forget you. None of it was true. And the license. When the engagement was announced, I understood 2 things. The first was that Julian would betray you. I did not know when. I knew it would happen. The second was that I could not in good conscience watch and stand at the edge of the room with nothing in my pocket. I told myself I had taken out insurance against my own helplessness. I have carried it for 11 days, and tonight, when I saw Julian cross the ballroom, I knew I had not been carrying insurance. I had been carrying a hope I was not entitled to. You are telling me you have been in love with me for 3 years. I am telling you, I do not know what to call what I have been. I am a barrister. I deal in evidence. The evidence is that I bought you a book 3 years ago, and have thought of you every week since. The evidence is that I obtained a license in the certain knowledge that I had no right to it. The evidence is that when you asked me tonight to marry you in 9 minutes, I said yes before you finished the sentence. Whatever name you wish to put to that, it is yours to put. What do you want from me? Tonight, tomorrow, this week? Nothing. That is not a useful answer. It is the true one. I married you to give you a name and a roof. I did not marry you to take anything you have not chosen to give. The blue room has a lock. I had it fitted last spring for reasons that are no longer relevant. You will use it tonight, and tomorrow, and every night for as long as you wish. If you decide otherwise in a week, or a month, or a year, you will tell me. If you never decide, I will not ask. She had married a stranger at midnight to save herself from ruin, and the stranger had handed her a key to a door he had fitted himself and would not open without permission. Somewhere in a part of her chest she had not been using, something began very quietly to wake up. She rose. He rose with her. At the door of the study she stopped, did not turn, and spoke to the wood. Thank you for the cowper. She walked back down the corridor, and after a long moment of standing with her forehead pressed to the door, she did not turn the lock. She lay down in the strange bed in the strange house. 3 doors away, her husband of 4 hours was sitting alone, with a candle burning down to nothing. The clock in the hall struck 3. When she finally slept, she slept, for the first time in 4 weeks, without dreaming of Julian Ashcombe at all. She woke to gray light, and a tray being set down very carefully. Mr. Ravensmere said to let you sleep, but the papers have come, and you would want to see them before anyone calls. For a moment, Cordelia did not remember where she was, and then she remembered all of it at once. 3 papers, ironed flat. The Morning Post had it on the 2nd page, in whispers from the last evening, clearly written by someone who had been at Holverston House and had been writing all night. The most discussed wedding of the season was announced not in St. George's, where it had been intended, but in a back library at midnight. Miss C. T., formerly betrothed to His Grace the Duke of P., was joined in matrimony shortly before the hour to Mr. T. Artois, a kinsman of the same Duke. Lady H. is understood to have remarked at breakfast that the bride looked, in her words, like a woman who had finally chosen her own life. His Grace was reported to have left in some agitation, accompanied by a person not yet named in print. The Times was shorter, drier, offered no comment. The town crier had no scruples, and ran the entire thing as a headline. The Duke's bride, wed his cousin before midnight, a public triumph or a private disaster? She read all 3, twice. Has there been correspondence? 14 cards, madam, and 3 letters. Where is Mr. Ravensmere? In the study, since 6. He had not slept. She washed in cold water, dressed in a gray wool gown Mrs. Halford had produced from somewhere, and went down. Theron was at the desk in the same shirt sleeves, looking as if he had slept perhaps 2 hours in the chair. You have seen the papers. I have. Worse than I had hoped, better than I had feared. I expected something. I did not know which paper would be most uncivil. Tell me what you have been writing. 3 things. A letter to your father, which I have drafted twice and torn up once. I would like you to read it. A letter to my mother, which will go regardless because she has heard and is in her carriage on her way here. And a notice for the papers, jointly signed, confirming the marriage and offering no further comment. You have been busy. I have been keeping my hands occupied, so I did not come upstairs at 4 in the morning and knock on a door I had no business knocking on. He said it without looking up. Cordelia, who had spent 4 weeks being courted by a duke who had never once said anything that direct, felt the words land somewhere under her sternum. The letter to her father was 3 paragraphs, scrupulously polite, set out the facts in order, offered no defense. It ended. I am aware that I have taken your daughter from you in a manner that no honorable man would have chosen, and I will spend whatever time you will grant me proving that the choice she made last night was not the worst one available to her. Send it. He nodded, folded the letter, turned to her. Cordelia, there is a complication. Julian called here at 8. He was not admitted. He left a note. I should like to read it. You should not. Theron. He took a folded sheet from the drawer and placed it on the desk. The handwriting was Julian's, the hand of a man who had never been told it was anything other than excellent. Cordelia, I have been a fool. The events of last night were the result of a misunderstanding I cannot adequately explain on paper, but can in person. I have spoken to the bishop. He has confirmed that a marriage performed under such haste, between persons in a state of evident emotional disturbance, is open to challenge. The proceeding would be discreet. I do not pretend to deserve a hearing, but I beg you to grant me one. J. She read it. Read it again. Then, very calmly, she folded it twice and placed it in the small fire in the grate. The paper curled, the ink darkened, and the handwriting that had once made her heart beat faster crumbled and was gone. He is going to challenge the marriage. He's going to try. Can he succeed? No. I obtained the license 11 days ago. The ceremony was conducted by an ordained clergyman before 2 witnesses of unimpeachable standing, with full consent given by both parties of legal age. There is no canonical ground. There is no civil ground. He may make a great deal of noise. He cannot make the marriage go away. And if he tries anyway, then we let him try. In public, with his mistress's name in every paper. He will not pursue it past a fortnight. His mother will not allow him to. His mother. The Dowager Duchess of Pelham is the most pragmatic woman I have ever met. She has been managing her son's appetite since he was 19. She will be in this house by noon. She will not come for me. She will come for you. She will want to know what kind of woman you intend to be, and she will want to know it from your face, not from your husband's. Cordelia thought about that, about the Dowager Duchess, who had kissed her on both cheeks at the betrothal supper and called her my dear new daughter, and who had been, throughout every meeting, a woman conducting a transaction. Then I shall receive her, in the small drawing room. You will be in the room, but you will not speak, unless I speak to you first. Yes, Mrs. Ravensmere. It was the first time he had used the name. It landed not as a claim, but as an acknowledgement. And this afternoon, Mr. Ravensmere, you will take me out in your carriage in full view of every person in Morecambe Square, and we will drive through Hyde Park at the fashionable hour, and we will be seen. If they want a scandal, they shall have one, but it will be the scandal I choose. She walked to the door. You have been very kind. I notice it. I shall not forget it. She did not wait for his answer. She walked into the small writing room and wrote the most difficult letter she had ever written. She did not know that the Dowager Duchess of Pelham's carriage was already turning the corner. She did not know that it contained a second passenger. She did not know that Marisol Vance had insisted, against every advice given to her, on coming as well. The 2 women came in together, which was the first surprise. The second was that the Dowager Duchess of Pelham, who had a face like a closed fan, and the upright carriage of a woman who had been told at 16 never to lean against anything, walked into the small drawing room and looked at Cordelia with an expression of unmistakable, exhausted, peculiar approval. Mrs. Ravensmere, Forgive the hour. My companion required a great deal of persuasion to accompany me." The companion stood half a step behind her. Marisol Vance was perhaps 30, taller than Cordelia, with the high color of a woman who had not slept, and the stillness of one who knew she was not welcome, and had come anyway. She wore black. Her widowhood from the wine merchant predated all of this by some years. Cordelia rose. "Your Grace, Mrs. Vance." "I did not expect to be received," Marisol said, voice low. "You have not yet been received. Sit, both of you." They sat. Theron stood at the window by Cordelia's instruction. The dowager opened her reticule, but took nothing from it. The opening was the gesture. "I shall be brief. My son has informed me that he intends to challenge your marriage. I have informed my son that if he does so, I shall personally instruct my solicitors to settle the entirety of the Pelham widow's jointure on Mrs. Vance in writing before the close of business today, and that he may explain to his children, when he has any, why their inheritance has been reduced by approximately £19,000, because their father could not accept that he had behaved like a fool in public. You have come, then, to tell me he will not challenge. I have come to tell you that I have prevented him from doing so. There is a distinction. There is. I should also like to apologize to you. I am not in the habit of apologizing, but you were placed in a circumstance last night that no woman of your character should have been required to endure, and the man who placed you in it bears my name. I am sorry. I shall not say it twice. Once is sufficient, Your Grace." The two women looked at each other. Something behind the dowager's eyes eased. "You are not what I expected." "I was not, until last night, what I expected, Your Grace." A small dry sound from the dowager. It might, on a more cheerful woman, have been a laugh. "Mrs. Vance, it is your turn." Marisol's hands tightened on the reticule. "Mrs. Ravensmere, I would rather sit in this room with you for 10 minutes than know for the rest of my life that I had been too cowardly to face you. I did not know, when this began 6 months ago, that you existed. He told me he was unmarried. By the time I learned of your engagement, I had become attached in ways I should not have. He told me the engagement was a matter of family business and would not change what we were to each other. Last night, when I understood that he intended to take me into the conservatory in front of you, I told him I would not go. You went. I went, because he said that if I did not, he would do it more publicly with someone else. I am ashamed of going. I am leaving London this afternoon. My sister has a house in Bath. I wish to say to you once that I am very sorry." She did not cry. She had clearly decided she would not. Cordelia had expected to hate this woman. She had spent the carriage ride home composing cool civil sentences. She found she could not remember any of them. What she could see was a woman who had been lied to and then used, and who had come knowing she would not be welcomed. "Mrs. Vance, I do not forgive you. I do not have it in me to forgive anyone today. No, of course not. But I will say this. You are the second person in this matter to behave with more decency than I had any right to expect. The first is the man at the window. I shall remember it. Go to Bath. Do not write to me. Begin again." Marisol's eyes filled, but she did not let them fall. "Thank you, Mrs. Ravensmere." The dowager rose with her. At the door she turned. "Mrs. Ravensmere, my son is being sent to Northumberland for an indefinite period. He has been informed that this is non-negotiable. He will not approach you. He will not be at any party at which you are expected. I understand you. There is one further thing." She crossed the room and stopped in front of Theron. "Mr. Ravensmere, you have been a thorn in my side for 15 years. You have refused 3 positions I offered you. You have, on one memorable occasion, told me to my face that I was wrong, in the hearing of my husband, about a matter on which I was, in fact, Wrong. I remember. I have never liked you, Theron. No, Your Grace. Her old, sharp face did something very small and very surprising. I find I have been mistaken. She did not wait for him to answer. The front door opened and shut, and the carriage wheels rolled away, and the drawing room was very quiet. Cordelia sat down. She had not realized she had been standing. Theron crossed to her, did not touch her, stood near enough that she could feel the warmth of him without his having to declare it. You did well? I did not feel that I did well. I felt that I did not throw a vase, which is not the same thing. In a great many drawing rooms, those are the same thing. She looked up at him and discovered him looking at her with an expression she had not seen before. The look of a man who had spent 3 years constructing reasons to keep his distance, and had just watched her dismantle the last of those reasons. I should like to lie down for an hour before we go to the park, and tonight, after dinner, I should like you to come and sit in the blue room with me, by the fire, while I read. I shall come. She walked past him to the door. She did not touch his hand as she went, but she could feel him following her with his eyes for the whole length of the corridor, and she did not, this time, mind it. The afternoon drive in Hyde Park was, by Cordelia's later assessment, the single most useful hour of public theater she had ever conducted. They were seen by everyone. She wore the dove-gray dress sent from her mother's house at 1 o'clock, with a brief note. I do not yet understand. I am not yet angry. Come on Thursday. Mama. Theron drove well, which she had not known. 3 duchesses and a marchioness inclined their heads. 2 countesses pretended not to have seen them, which was its own kind of acknowledgement. Lady Halverston, in an open landau, raised her parasol in a slow, deliberate salute. By the time they returned, the question of whether the marriage would survive socially had been answered in their favor. Not because anyone had decided to approve, but because enough women of consequence had decided not to disapprove in public. After dinner, she went up to the blue room. She did not change. She lit the lamps herself and built up the fire herself, and she sat in the low chair with the blue volume of Cowper in her lap. She read for a quarter of an hour before she heard his step. He knocked once. Come in. He had changed out of his coat, wore a dark dressing gown over his shirt and waistcoat, the correct degree of informality for a husband visiting his wife's sitting room. He carried a book under his arm. Where would you like me? The chair across from mine. He sat. He opened his book. He read. For 20 minutes neither spoke. The fire moved. A coal shifted. The room smelled of wood smoke and beeswax. Cordelia, who had spent 4 weeks being courted by a man who had never once let her sit in silence, discovered that silence was a thing she had been starved for without knowing it. She set the book down. Theron, read me something. From this? He held up his book, a small cloth-bound thing. From whatever you are reading. It is. Not Cowper. I have read Cowper. Read me something I have not read. He turned the book over in his hands. The hesitation was not reluctance. It was a man being asked, for the first time in a very long time, to share something he had been keeping for himself. It is Catullus. In English. In Latin. My Latin is poor. I know. You told me 3 years ago. To your aunt in the bookshop, when she suggested an edition of Virgil. You said your Latin was not equal to it. She stared at him. I do not remember that. It was not a remarkable thing for you to have said. It was a remarkable thing for me to have heard. Read me the Catullus, then translate it, slowly. He read. His Latin was the Latin of a man who had read it for pleasure for a very long time, and the lines came out of him quietly, almost shyly. She did not understand the words. She understood the cadence. It was a love poem. He stopped, looked up. It is the one about the sparrow. Lesbia had a sparrow. Catullus is jealous of it. of how it sits in her lap and pecks at her fingers. He says he wishes he could play with her as the sparrow plays, to ease the heavy sadness of his heart. And you have been carrying it about for a long time. She closed the cowper. Come here. He did not move. Theron, please. He set the Catullus down very carefully and crossed the small distance and stopped at her chair. And he did not, to his enormous credit, assume. She held out her hand. He took it. His hand was warm and slightly rough at the knuckles, and it closed around her without grip. I do not know what I am doing. I do not know either. I was meant to marry your cousin in 11 days. 11 days no longer exists. 11 days has been overwritten. He was the man I was supposed to love. He was the man you were supposed to marry. They are not the same. She drew his hand closer, turned it over, laid her cheek against the inside of his wrist, where the pulse beat, and closed her eyes. His pulse went faster under her cheek. It was the most honest thing about him she had encountered all day. The cowper, 3 years ago. Did you know I was already promised? Not to Julian, before Julian, to the Honorable Stephen Marbridge, who broke the engagement when my father's investments, I knew, and bought the book anyway. Because I could not bear that you were going to go home from that shop having been disappointed by something so small. You have been looking after me for 3 years, without my knowing. I have been looking after the idea of you. I do not flatter myself that I have been looking after you. I have not had the right. You have it now. He went very still. She opened her eyes, lifted her head, and looked up at him. You have the right now, Theron, if you wish it. Not all of it. Not yet. But more than you have allowed yourself to take. He went down on one knee beside the chair. He did not kiss her. He leaned his forehead very gently against the side of her temple and stayed there, breathing for a long, unhurried moment. Cordelia, thank you. For what? For not turning the lock last night. I heard you not turn it. I sat in the study and listened. He could not finish. She turned her face. Her lips brushed his temple. It wasn't a kiss. It was the next thing before a kiss. Go to bed, Theron, in your own room, tonight. Yes. He rose. He did not let go of her hand for another long moment, and when he did, it was the way one set down an object that had been entrusted to one's keeping for the evening. At the door, he stopped. He did not turn. Cordelia, I should tell you. Before tomorrow. She waited. I have a daughter. The fire shifted in the grate. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 11. Cordelia Ravensmere, who had been married for not quite 23 hours, sat very still and discovered that the night, which she had thought was over, wasn't over yet. She did not speak for a long moment. The fire moved. The clock finished chiming. Theron stood with his hand on the door latch and his back to her, and Cordelia could see the slight tremor in his shoulders that was fear of having said the thing aloud after carrying it silently for so long. How old? 4? 5 in the spring. Her name, Lila. Theron, turn around. He turned. His face was the face of a man who had decided to receive whatever came next without flinching. Sit down. I should stand for this. Sit. I am tired and will not crane my neck. He sat in the small wooden chair by the writing desk. Her mother was a woman called Hester Conroy. We were not married. We were never going to be. It was not a great love affair, Cordelia, and I will not insult you by pretending it was. She was a widow, older than I was. She did not wish to remarry. We parted on terms of friendship in the spring of the year before last. And the child? She did not tell me she was carrying a child. She intended to raise her in Yorkshire with her sister, and to write to me at some later date. Hester was a proud woman. She did not wish to be in any man's debt. What changed? She died. The single word landed like a stone into a still pond. In childbed. The child survived. The sister wrote to me. The letter reached me 3 days after the burial. I traveled to Yorkshire. I met my daughter. She was 11 days old. He pressed the heel of his hand briefly to his eye. I brought her south. She lives on Wenmore Street, 3 streets from here, with a nurse and a cook. Mrs. Halford visits Tuesdays and Fridays. I see her on Sundays and Wednesday evenings. Who else knows? My mother. Mrs. Halford, the nurse, the cook, the doctor. Edmund Halicott, who baptized her. That is all. Julian does not know. No. And you did not tell me last night. No. Why? Because last night you had been wounded in a way no person should be wounded in public. Because last night you needed a roof and a name and a door with a lock. Because last night, if I had told you, you would have had to make the calculation in 9 minutes, and I would not make you carry that on top of everything else. I told myself I would tell you over breakfast. I did not. I did not, because I was afraid you would feel I had cheated you, and I had no right to be afraid of that, because you have a right to feel whatever you feel. You did cheat me. Yes. You let me sit by this fire an hour ago and put my cheek against your wrist, not knowing. Yes. She was not crying. She felt instead a strange, clean clarity, the way one felt after a long fever broke. Tell me about her. He looked up sharply. He had braced for almost any other question. What is she like? Is she happy? She's small for her age, dark hair. She has my mother's eyes. She's quick. She speaks more clearly than most children of 4. The nurse has been teaching her her letters, and she knows more of them than she lets on, because she has discovered that being thought to know less gets her more cake. She loves a particular wooden horse. It was mine when I was a boy. The paint is mostly gone. She will not be parted from it, even at meals. His voice thickened. She is the best thing that has happened to me. I have been her father for almost 4 years, and ashamed of nothing in that time, except that I have not yet found a way to give her a household. I want to meet her. Tomorrow. I will come to Wenmore Street. I do not wish to be presented to her as the lady from the great house. I wish to be presented to her as a person. He stared at her. You are not angry? I am angry, Theron. I am angry that you did not tell me when I asked you what you wanted from me. I am angry, in the particular way one is angry at a person whom one has begun, against one's better judgment, to trust. I am not angry that she exists. I am not angry that you love her. I would think less of you if you did not. I should have told you. Yes. Do not say it more than once. I have heard one apology today from a woman in black, and I have used up my capacity to receive them. She rose, crossed to him, and stopped in front of his chair. Sundays, Wednesday evenings. From now on, you go on those days, and I go with you. I did not marry a man last night. I married a household. I should like to know the household I married. He took her hand. He did not raise it to his lips. He pressed his thumb once against the inside of her wrist, where her pulse beat, the same gesture from the altar. She understood this time what the gesture meant. It was a question, and the question was, "Are you still here?" She turned her hand so that her palm was against his, and did not say anything, because the answer did not require words. The clock chimed midnight. Go to bed. We have a great deal to do tomorrow. He went. At the door, he paused, did not turn. Cordelia. Her favorite color is yellow. Then I shall wear yellow tomorrow. The door closed very softly. She sat for a long time by the dying fire. She did not feel like a woman who had been betrayed 24 hours ago. She felt like a woman who had been handed 3 different lives in the last 24 hours and required to decide quickly which one she wished to live. The decision was no longer difficult. It was only, she discovered, large. The house on Wenmore Street was the smallest house Cordelia had ever entered as a guest. 2 windows on the front, a green door with a brass knocker shaped like a wren, a single step worn shallow by 4 years of small feet. The door was opened by a woman in her 50s with a face like a kind apple, who looked at Cordelia and did not pretend to be unsurprised. "Mrs. Penn, this is my wife." "Mr. Ravensmere." "Yes, the papers reached us. You'll be wanting tea, ma'am. The child is in the back parlor. She's been brushing her horse for an hour." Cordelia smiled. It was the first true smile she had produced in 2 days. "Then I'd better not keep the horse waiting." The back parlor was a small, bright room with yellow curtains. Yellow curtains, Cordelia noted, and felt her chest tighten at the small, private confirmation. A low table, a rag rug, and a child sitting on the rug with a wooden horse across her knees. Lila Ravensmere was very small. She had her father's dark hair and the gray eyes of a grandmother she had never met, and she was wearing a yellow dress with a slightly crooked sash she had clearly tied herself, and she looked up when the adults came in and went very briefly still. Cordelia did not bend down. She did not do any of the things she had seen aunts do to children that had made her, when she was a child, want to crawl under the furniture. She sat directly on the rag rug in her yellow muslin dress, arranging her skirts around her. "That is a very fine horse. He is old. Old horses are the best. They know things." "What does he know?" "The way home. Old horses always know the way home. You can drop the reins, and they will take you there." Lila considered this, turned the horse in her hands. "His name is Beechnut. Beechnut is an excellent name. My papa named him." "Your papa has good taste in names." Lila glanced at her father, the quick, checking glance of a child gauging a parent. Theron, in the doorway, gave the smallest nod. "You are wearing a yellow dress." "I am. I am wearing a yellow dress." "I noticed. We have matched, you and I, without arranging it." "That means," Lila said gravely, "we are friends." "Does it?" "Mrs. Penn says so. She says when ladies wear the same color without arranging it, they are friends. And when they wear the same color, because they have arranged it, and they are only being polite." "Mrs. Penn is a wise woman." "Yes," Lila said, with the satisfied air of a child confirming an opinion she had long held privately. Cordelia stayed on the rag rug for an hour. She did not try to win the child or charm the child, only to be a person sitting on a rug having a conversation with another person about a wooden horse. They progressed from the horse to a doll with a missing eye, to a book with a torn page, to whether the cat next door was friendly or deceitful. By the time Mrs. Penn brought tea, Lila was leaning against Cordelia's knee, and Cordelia's hand was resting lightly on the back of the small, dark head, and Theron in the doorway had not moved or spoken in the entire hour. When it was time to go, Lila stood with great formality and lifted her arms to her father. He picked her up. She put her face into his neck, then lifted her head and pointed at Cordelia. "She comes back. She comes back, my love." "When?" "On Sunday." "That is too far." "On Friday, then." "Tomorrow." "It is all right," Cordelia said. "Tomorrow." The child nodded once. Then she squirmed down, ran to Cordelia, put both hands on her knees, and said very seriously, "You may borrow Beechnut until tomorrow, because we are friends." She placed the wooden horse, paint-worn, pale, and beloved, into Cordelia's hands. Cordelia did not trust her voice for a moment. "I shall take very good care of him." "I know," Lila said, and ran out. In the carriage, Theron did not speak. After a long while, Cordelia, holding the wooden horse in her lap, saw a tear sliding down the side of his face that he had decided, since he could not stop it, to ignore. She moved across to his bench, sat beside him, put her hand into his, and let him have the rest of the journey home in silence. That night, after dinner, she went up to the blue room. She lit the fire, placed the wooden horse on the mantel, and waited. At 9:30, there was a knock. "Come in." Theron was in shirt sleeves, unshaven since morning. "Cordelia, I have been a barrister for 9 years. I have argued before judges and juries. In my professional life, I have never been at a loss for a word. You're at a loss now. Then come and sit, and stop being at a loss in the doorway." He came to the footstool by the fire, which placed his face below hers, and took her hands. "I will tell you the truth, and I will not dress it up. I have loved you for 3 years. Now I will tell you the part I didn't say. I did not love you the way a man loves a woman he has known. I loved you the way a man loves an idea, at a distance, the way one loves the weather. It was a small, clean, tidy love, and I was wrong about it. What I felt last night, when you asked me to marry you in 9 minutes, was what a man feels when the abstraction he has been admiring walks across a ballroom and asks him a real question. Theron, let me finish. What I felt today, on a rag rug in a back parlor, when my daughter put her wooden horse into your hands." His voice broke on daughter. He did not try to disguise it. Was not love at a distance. It was the specific, terrible, complete love of a man watching the woman he has married, by the most absurd accident of timing, sit down on a rug and become, within an hour, the second person in the world that his child has chosen. I have not been trained for that feeling. "Come up here." He rose. She made room in the low chair, and it was barely big enough, and she did not care. And he sat with one arm along the back and the other across her lap. And for a long moment they simply breathed each other's air. I did not know 2 days ago that I was capable of feeling anything like this. I thought I had used up all of my feeling on a man who did not deserve any of it. It seems I had a great deal more in reserve. "Yes. Kiss me. Please." He kissed her. Not the kiss of a man who had been waiting 3 years, somehow more careful. The kiss of a man who had been given that afternoon a wooden horse on loan, and had understood, at the giving, the precise nature of trust. His mouth on hers was warm and unhurried, and absolutely steady. And Cordelia, who had been kissed perhaps 4 times in her life, and never once like this, felt every moment of it land somewhere in her chest, and stay there. "I'm not going to ask for anything tonight. I know. I'm going to sit here with you until you tell me to go. I'm going to do that every night for as long as it takes. And when you tell me one night not to go to my room, and only when you tell me, I will not go. Stay tonight, just to sit, until the fire goes out." He stayed. The fire burned low. Cordelia put her head on her husband's shoulder, closed her eyes, and somewhere in a part of her chest she had not been using, the small, dangerous waking thing of the night before, turned, settled, and made itself at home. The letter came on a Tuesday. 11 days had passed. 11 days of the strangest, most ordinary domestic life Cordelia had ever lived. She had been to Wenmore Street 4 times. She had been to her mother's house on Thursday, and survived a conversation that began in tears and ended with her mother saying, "I think, my dear, that perhaps you have done the only sensible thing in this family for 2 generations." She had received 17 calls and returned 11. She had appeared at 2 small dinners, attended by women who had decided to be allies. In increments she did not yet wish to count, she had begun to feel like a woman who lived in a house, rather than one who was hiding in one. The letter was on the salver when she came down for breakfast. She knew the handwriting. Cream paper, red seal. In a hand she had once thought was the most elegant thing she had ever read. She did not open it. She carried it into the breakfast room. "From Northumberland," Theron said. "Yes." "Do you wish to read it alone?" "No." She broke the seal. Julian wrote at length. He had used 11 days to construct, in 7 pages of close hand, the most elegant apology Cordelia had ever read. He did not contest the marriage. He referred to it as your present circumstance, a small revealing tell. He confessed his behavior had been the act of a man not in command of himself. He noted, with delicate care, that the bishop had reviewed and declined any challenge, that he, Julian, accepted the bishop's view, but that he wished her to know, as a matter purely of private conscience, between 2 persons who were once promised to one another, that if she should ever, at any future date, find that the present arrangement no longer suited her, he would consider himself to remain at her disposal. He signed it your servant, in penitence and hope. Julian. She set it down. He is offering to be available. Should I ever decide that I would prefer, after all, to have married a duke? Yes. He is, in his own mind, behaving with great generosity. He always does. Theron had not moved, had not reached for the letter, had not asked to read it. He sat with his coffee and looked at her with the steadiness of a man who had decided, before opening his mouth, that he would not influence her by so much as a flicker. You are not going to ask me what I think, because I do not have a vote in what you think. I have a vote only in what I do once you have told me. I'm going to write back today. I would like you to read the letter before I send it. She rose, went into the writing room, and wrote in a hand that did not waver. Your Grace, I am in receipt of your letter of the 17th. I do not require a reply. I write only to acknowledge that I have read yours and to inform you of the following. The present arrangement, as you describe it, isn't an arrangement. It is a marriage. It is the best decision I have made in my life, and I made it in 9 minutes, and I would make it again in 8. There is no future date at which I shall find that it no longer suits me. There is no private conscience between us. Please do not write to me again. C. Ravensmere. She blotted it, carried it back, and placed it before Theron. He read it. His pewter eyes had a depth in them she had not seen before, something warm and very still, the way a deep river is still. You wrote the best decision I have made in my life. I did. You meant it. I meant it. You have known me for 13 days. I have known you for 3 years. I simply did not know it. The cowper sat by my bed. For 3 years, it sat by my bed. I picked it up when I could not sleep. It was, without my knowing why, the book I reached for when I was unhappy. I have been living with a kindness of yours in my bedroom for 3 years. He took the letter, folded it, sealed it, and rang the bell. It will go this morning. That evening, after a long, quiet hour by the fire, after Mrs. Halford had brought in the candles and gone up, Cordelia stood at the foot of the stairs with her hand on the banister. Theron stood 3 steps below. Theron, tonight. Not the chair by the fire. Not this time. You are certain. I have been certain for 6 days. I have been waiting only to be certain that I was certain for the right reasons. I am. He came up. He stopped 1 step below, which placed his face level with hers. He did not touch her. Not yet. Not in the hall. He simply looked at her, and Cordelia understood that the thing she had been waiting 6 days to be sure of was not whether she wanted him. It was whether, having been so wrong about Julian, she could trust her own knowing again. She could. She had been right about the man on the rag rug. She had been right about the man who had not asked for her vote, had not read the letter, and had carried a license against his heart for 11 days because he could not bear the idea of her standing alone in a ballroom afterward. Come up. He came up. The blue room was warm. The fire was banked. Beechnut watched from the mantel with old, wise wooden eyes. Cordelia took her husband's hand, drew him into the room, shut the door behind them, and for the first time since she had moved into the house, turned the lock. She turned it not to keep him out. She turned it to keep the rest of the world from getting in. What followed, she would not, in later years, describe to anyone. Some things were not meant to be described. They were meant only to be lived and remembered and added, like a small, steady weight, to the foundation of a marriage. What followed was tender and not hurried, and a little awkward in the careful ways that mattered, and a little reverent in the careful ways that mattered more. Afterward, they lay in the strange bed in the strange house that had stopped being strange somewhere in the last 2 weeks, and his hand was on her hair, and her cheek was on his chest. "Cordelia, I should tell you something." "If you tell me," she said into his chest, "that you have a second daughter, I shall not be answerable for the consequences." A laugh moved under her ear. A real laugh. She had not, she realized, heard him properly laugh before, and the sound was an unexpected gift. "No more daughters. I love you. I have not said it. I am saying it now. I love you, and I am going to say it tomorrow and the morning after, until you grow tired of hearing it. I love you also. I shall not grow tired of it." He pressed his lips to her hair. This time, when she slept, she dreamed of yellow ribbons. The note arrived at 4:30 on a Friday. The footman brought it in person to the small drawing room where Cordelia was reading, and Theron was at the desk, and the footman's face was the face of a servant, who knew, before the message was opened, that the message was bad. "From Wenmore Street, sir. Mrs. Penn says it is urgent." Theron read it. He did not speak. The hand that handed it to her wasn't steady. "Sir, the child is gone. I left her on the rug at 3:30 to fetch the milk, and when I came back, the front door stood ajar, and she was not in the room. I have searched the house and the streets nearest. I have sent word to the constables. Please come. Mrs. Penn." The paper rattled in Cordelia's hand. "How long ago?" "Dated at 4, an hour." "She is 4 years old." "I know." He was already at the door, calling for the carriage. Cordelia ran for the hall. They were in the carriage in 4 minutes. They were on Wenmore Street in 11. Mrs. Penn was in the front parlor. She had been crying but had stopped, because crying was not useful. "Mr. Ravensmere, the constable's man has been. They are searching toward the river. I have sent boys to the bakery and the dressmakers. There is no sign. Sir, I am so very—" "Mrs. Penn." Theron's voice was steady in the way Cordelia recognized, as the voice a man used in court when he could not afford to feel what he was feeling. "You are not at fault. Tell me what she was doing when you left." "Looking out of the window." "At what?" "At a carriage. A grand one, stopped at the corner. She asked me whose it was. I said I didn't know." Cordelia went very still. "A grand carriage." "Yes, madam. Black, with crests on the door." "Theron." He had gone the color of slate. "Mrs. Penn, please describe the crest." "There was a creature. A bird, I think, with its wings out. A swan. The Pelham crest was a swan with its wings displayed." Cordelia's hand found Theron's. She did not remember reaching. "He is supposed to be in Northumberland." "You think he came back?" "I think a man who writes a letter offering himself as available is a man who has been making other arrangements as well. Mrs. Penn, stay here. Send word the moment anything is heard." "I am coming with you." "Cordelia, Theron Ravensmere, if you say to me at this moment that I don't need to come, I shall never forgive you. Get in the carriage." He got in. They went first to the Pelham townhouse in Grosvenor Square. The shutters were closed, the knocker off the door. A sleepy footman at the area gate said, "His Grace is in the country, sir, this past fortnight." with the wooden expression of a servant instructed to say exactly that. Theron returned to the carriage and gave the coachman an address Cordelia did not recognize. "Where are we going?" "The inn on the North Road, where the Pelham horses are stabled. If he came down, he changed there." The drive was 22 minutes. Cordelia counted them, holding Beechnut in her lap. She did not allow herself even once to imagine what a 4-year-old child might be feeling at this moment in a strange carriage with a stranger. At the inn, Theron disappeared inside for 6 minutes. He came out at a run. He took her north on the road 2 hours ago. The groom saw the child. He has been here twice in the last week, Cordelia. He has been planning. How fast can we follow? As fast as the horses can go without dying. Then go. The North Road in late afternoon in autumn was a hard road. The carriage rocked. The light began to fail. Theron sat opposite her, with his hands flat on his knees, did not speak for the first 8 miles, and Cordelia did not press him, because she could see he was holding himself together by exact arithmetic. At the 9th mile he spoke. "If we do not catch him before nightfall, we will. If we do not, Theron, we will. He is not running for his life. He's running for a point. He will stop at the first inn that suits him, because Julian has never in his life endured discomfort he could avoid. He will stop, and we will find him, and we will bring her home. You are very calm. I'm not calm. I'm furious. There is a difference. A calm woman would weep. I shall weep tomorrow." He almost smiled. The carriage caught the Pelham coach at the 3rd coaching inn past Barnet, just as the last light was draining from the sky. Cordelia saw it first. The black carriage in the inn yard with its lamps lit, the swan crest catching the light, a tired postilion unbuckling the lead horse. Through the lit window of the inn's private parlor, she saw, for one suspended second, a small dark head. Lila was at a table. She had a cup in front of her. She was not crying. She was looking, with the gravely furious expression of a 4-year-old who had decided to be displeased, at someone Cordelia could not see from the angle. "She is not hurt." "No." "You go in first. Do not, Theron, look at me. Don't strike him. Not in front of her." His pewter eyes had a flame in them she had not, in 15 days, seen. "I promise you." They went in. Julian Ashcombe was sitting opposite the child with a glass of claret in his hand, and an expression of weary amusement, as if he were a man required to sit and wait out a small storm. He looked up when the door opened. Then, slowly, he set his glass down. "Ah, Theron." "Well." Lila turned in her chair. When she saw her father, her small face, which had been holding itself in the iron set of a child who has decided to be brave because there is nobody else available to be brave for her, broke. "Papa." She was off the chair and across the room in 3 seconds, and Theron caught her and lifted her, and her small arms went round his neck so tightly that Cordelia could see the white of her knuckles. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Cordelia stepped past her husband. She walked into the middle of the small parlor, stopped at the edge of the table, placed her gloved hands on the wood, and looked at Julian across the small distance of cheap polished oak. "Stand up, Your Grace." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Cordelia, my dear, there is a perfectly reasonable stand up." He stood slowly, with the air of a man humoring a woman in a state of unnecessary feeling. "I had no intention of harm. I wished only to speak with the child. I learned recently of her existence. It was a matter of family interest. You took her from her nursery. I invited her to step into the carriage. She came willingly. She is 4. She is a Ravensmere. The Ravensmeres are kin to the Pelhams. I have, I believe, some standing. You have no standing." He smiled, the small, careful smile that had worked for 31 years in every drawing room into which he had carried it. "Cordelia, my dear, I beg you to compose yourself. We will return the child to London together and— Be quiet. The smile faltered. I am going to say something to you, Your Grace, and you are going to listen. And then we are going to take this child and leave this inn, and you will never speak to her, or to me, or to my husband again. You took a 4-year-old child from a private home in the city of London because you have been told no by a woman, and you do not yet possess the capacity to receive that word. You have spent your entire life being told yes, and you mistook it for a thing you had earned. You have not earned anything, Julian. You have inherited a great deal. There is a difference. The difference is the whole shape of your character, and I did not see it until you walked across a ballroom and showed it to me, and I have been grateful every day since that you did. His face had gone the color of old wax. You stole a child to get my attention. I didn't say it. Cordelia, say it, Julian, or I shall walk into the common parlor, where there are perhaps 15 travelers eating their supper, and I shall describe precisely what I have just discovered the Duke of Pelham has done. Your name will be in every paper in London by Sunday. Your seat in Lords will not survive it. Your tenants will not. There will be no Northumberland deep enough to hide you. So, say it. He stared at her. She had never seen his face do what it did then. The composure cracked. The careful charm fell away. Underneath it, for the first time, she saw what was actually there. It was not cruelty. It was emptiness. I stole a child, he said. Louder. I stole the child. Why? Because I had thought, his voice cracked. I had thought that if I had her, you would come. I came, Cordelia said. For her, not for you. Do you see the distinction? Yes. You will leave London in the morning. You will return to Northumberland. You will not write to me again. You will not write to my husband. You will not, in any letter to your mother, mention this child or this inn. If I hear so much as a whisper of this in any drawing room, I shall release the entirety of this story to the town crier myself, in my own handwriting, with my signature at the bottom. Yes. Sit down. He sat. She turned. Theron was at the door with Lila in his arms. The child had her face pressed into his neck, and her small hand fisted in his collar. Cordelia crossed and put her hand against the small, dark head. Beechnut is in the carriage. He is waiting for you. He has been very worried. Lila lifted her head a quarter inch. You brought him? I brought him. He does not like to be left. That is why I brought him. The small head went back into Theron's neck. Take her to the carriage, my love. I shall come in a moment. Theron carried his daughter out, and Cordelia turned back to Julian one final time. His face was wet. He had not been crying exactly. He was not the kind of man who knew how to cry, but his eyes had wept anyway, in the involuntary way the body weeps when the self runs out of other instruments. There is one thing more. For 3 years, before you ever spoke to me, a man you have known your entire life sent me a book of poetry, anonymously. He never told me. He never claimed it. He simply sent it because he had seen me disappointed in a shop and could not bear it. He did this without expectation. He did it without reward. He did it for 3 years, Julian, in the quiet, steady way that decent men do quiet, steady things, while you were spending those same 3 years deciding which of London's drawing rooms most flattered your profile. I would rather have one of his Tuesdays than every Sunday of your life. She did not wait for him to answer. She walked out and climbed into the carriage and rapped on the roof. For the first mile, no one spoke. Lila had fallen asleep within 3 minutes, the bottomless sleep of small children after large frights, and Theron held her with the careful, exhausted stillness of a man who had nearly lost everything and was now afraid to disturb the air around what he had not lost. After a while, Cordelia discovered that her hands had begun to shake. Theron noticed. He shifted Lila to one arm and held out the other. "Come here." She crossed and sat beside him, put her face against his shoulder, and shook silently for perhaps 4 minutes. Theron held her with the arm that was not holding his daughter, and did not say a word, because he understood, as she had understood about him on the morning of the first day, that some kinds of holding were the only useful thing. When she had stopped, she lifted her head. "Theron, I told him a true thing in there. I told him I would rather have one of your Tuesdays than every Sunday of his life." He turned his head and pressed his lips to her hair. Into her hair, so the sleeping child would not hear, he said, "Cordelia, my Tuesdays are yours. All of them. For the rest of my life." The carriage rolled south. The lights of London rose over the dark fields ahead, and the three of them, the man, the woman, and the small, dark-haired child, went home to the house on Mortcombe Square, where Mrs. Halford was waiting with the door open and the lamps lit, and the household gathered itself around its smallest member, and did not let her out of its sight for 3 days. The second wedding was in the spring. It was not a wedding, technically. They were already married. It was, instead, what Cordelia had begun to call, in the privacy of her own chest, the wedding I would have chosen. A quiet morning service in the small chapel at her mother's house in Hertfordshire, attended by 23 people who actually loved them, conducted by Edmund Hallicott. There was a chapel full of daffodils. There was Cordelia in a pale yellow gown that Lila had helped to choose. There was Theron in a coat, the color of a deep river, with a sprig of rosemary in his buttonhole, because Lila had pressed it into his hand that morning and informed him that it is for remembering Papa. Mrs. Penn says so. There was Lila herself, in yellow, walking ahead of Cordelia down the aisle with a basket of petals and the gravity of a queen on Coronation Day. There was Cordelia's mother, weeping quietly in the front pew, who had said the night before, "I was so wrong about so much. I am so glad you were braver than I taught you to be." There was the Dowager Duchess, who had not been invited, and had nevertheless written 3 weeks earlier a single dry sentence. "I shall not come, as my presence would be tactless, but I should like you to know that I am pleased." It had been signed simply M.A. Pelham, and Cordelia had wept over it for an entirely disproportionate amount of time. There was, against all expectation, a letter from Bath. "Mrs. Ravensmere, I have been told that you are to be married a second time today, in a chapel of your own choosing, before a clergyman of your own choosing, in a dress of your own choosing. I find it gives me a kind of peace I did not expect. I have begun to begin again. I run a small school here for the children of war widows. I shall not write again. I wish you every happiness it is in my power to wish you. Monsieur Vance," Edmund Hallicott did not say dearly beloved. "I have known both of these persons for 7 months. I should like to begin by saying that I do not know 2 persons who have arrived at this morning by a less likely road, nor 2 who deserve more thoroughly the morning they have arrived at." He turned to Cordelia. "The first time I married you, I did so in 11 minutes by the clock on Lady Halverston's library wall. You did not have a ring. You did not, at the time, know the man you were marrying in any way that the law ordinarily requires. I should like to ask you, this morning, with the ring you have chosen, and a full knowledge of the man, whether your answer is the same." "It is the same. Mr. Ravensmere, the first time I married you, you produced a license you had been carrying for 11 days. I did not, at the time, ask why." Theron looked at Cordelia. "Because I had been waiting for 3 years to be permitted to do something useful for her. The license was the first useful thing that occurred to me. I should like to record, this morning, that it has not been the last." Lila, in the front pew, turned to her grandmother and said in the carrying whisper of a 4-year-old, who has not yet learned that whispers can be heard. Papa is being very serious, Grandmama. I think he is going to cry. Theron did not cry. He took Cordelia's hand and placed on her finger a small, plain gold band that had belonged to his grandmother, the only person in his family his mother had ever loved. Hallicott pronounced them married, properly this time. In the little chapel, with the daffodils and the rosemary and the small girl in yellow, Cordelia let herself feel the entire weight of what had happened to her. She had been chosen, in front of all of London, against. And she had chosen, in 9 minutes, a man she did not know. And the man had turned out to be the kind who carried licenses against his heart and bought books for strangers and held shaking wives in carriages on the North Road. She had not made a choice in spite of her circumstances that night in the ballroom. She had made the choice that the rest of her life had been, secretly, waiting for her to make. 2 years later. Lila was nearly 7. She had grown 2 inches, lost a front tooth, and acquired, over the strenuous objections of her father, a cat. The cat was orange. The cat was named Cowper, after a poet Lila had not yet read, but had been told was important to the family. The cat slept on Beechnut, who had been retired with honors to a velvet cushion on the nursery shelf. Theron had taken Silk. Cordelia had founded, with Marisol Vance, a friendship neither woman would have predicted, a small society for the placement of governesses with widowed mothers in straitened circumstances. Julian Ashcombe lived now almost exclusively in Northumberland. Cordelia did not think of him often. When she did, it was with a kind of distant pity, the way one thought of weather one had once been caught out in and had since acquired a better coat against. It was a Tuesday in October. Theron came home at 4. Cordelia was in the small drawing room with Lila on the rug, doing sums. The fire was lit. There was tea. He came in, stopped in the doorway, looked at his wife and his daughter, and his cat and the fire, and his face did the thing his face had been doing in recent months, more and more often. It softened, in the unguarded way of a man who had stopped expecting to be hit. "Papa," Lila said without looking up. "What is 6 and 7? 13. Mama said 13. Then your mama is correct. I knew she was. I was checking you." He came to the chair beside Cordelia, sat, and took her hand. "I have been thinking on the way home about something you said to me on a Tuesday in a carriage on the North Road." "Which thing?" "That you would rather have one of my Tuesdays than every Sunday of his life." "I remember it. I have given you a great many Tuesdays. I should like, if you are agreeable, to give you a great many more." "How many?" "All of them. The remaining ones." She turned her face and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "That, Mr. Ravensmere, is precisely the arrangement I had in mind." Lila on the rug rolled her eyes. "Papa, you are being soppy again?" "Yes, my love." "Mama, tell him to stop." "I shall not, my love." The cat on the windowsill was washing his face. Lila returned to her sums. Theron kept Cordelia's hand. The fire moved. Outside, in Mortcombe Square, the late afternoon light went the color of honey, and somewhere a bell rang the hour, and the small, steady, miraculous world they had built, by accident, in the 10 minutes before midnight at Halverston House, and the 7 months and the 2 years that had followed, went quietly, beautifully on. And so we leave them, Cordelia and Theron Ravensmere, and the small girl in yellow, and the orange cat named for a poet, and the wooden horse retired to honors. We leave them on a Tuesday afternoon in October, with the light going honey gold over the rooftops of London, and a sum half finished on the rug. Cordelia chose, that night in the ballroom, what she thought was the only door left open to her. She believed she was running. She did not know that the man waiting on the other side had been keeping it open for 3 years, with a license against his heart and a book of poetry he had never claimed, and a quiet, steady kind of love that had not asked, even once, to be returned. Some doors open both ways. Some choices we make in 9 minutes turn out to have been waiting for us for years. And some men, the rare ones, the quiet ones, the ones we walk past in bookshops without ever knowing they have seen us, turn out to be the ones who, when the ballroom finally fails, are already standing at the side door with a carriage and a coat and a question. The question is always the same. The question is, will you let me? And the answer, when we are brave enough to give it, is the answer that changes everything. If this story moved you, please do the small kind thing that keeps stories like this one being told. Subscribe, if you have not already. Ring the bell. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in 9 minutes at Halverston House. Until then, be braver than they taught you. Choose the Tuesday. And know, wherever you are tonight, that someone has been keeping a door open for you for longer than you know.